to look up at the stars. No, 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 no.
Come take a look at my dream world.
You don't have to look up at the stars.
Chat, if you wanna come get it, then come for it. I'm so clean, my kick's nice, I'm Chuck Norris. Minute made the beat bounce, had to jump on it. Run for it, run, Gump Forrest Gump like hollow pumps, you gotta jump. No trouble, no double, I got a stunt. You don't have to look up at the stars. Make one wish, you're looking at a star. Swag so fresh, you can put it in the jar. And the way I change gear, you can put me in the car. I remember when me and Seif used to sneak in every concert door. Now I got my feet in. Every day is Get Friday, no weekend.
You don't have to look up at the stars.
Welcome back, everyone, to your favorite live sports show. That is indeed #ThisJustIn. And this, I always say it's a special show, but it's indeed a special show because it is an Aaron Rodgers legacy show. So for that, I had to bring a special cast. Ken, Peyton, Brian, thank you all guys for coming on. And we're going to get right into it quickly because even though we shouldn't have to, because it's a very long drawn out situation. And by that, I mean, we all know by now, Aaron Rodgers has probably played his last snap in Lambeau. Feel he is going to move on to the New York Jets. Will he get to that very shortly? But Brian, we're talking about a very prolific quarterback with some questionable off-field antics, behavior, whatever you want to say. What do you think Aaron Rodgers' legacy, his lasting legacy, will be?
His lasting legacy will be Brett Favre's, which sounds crazy for people in my generation. So Peyton probably thinks that's absolutely nuts. But my dad talked about Brett Favre was like just incredible talent and what could be kind of a Brett Favre. Like they're surprised that he only ended up winning one Super Bowl. Like what happened? And I think that's going to be the same thing with Aaron Rodgers. Like everybody's going to talk about the talent and how did he only end up with one Super Bowl? And then, of course, at the end, bouncing around from team to team. There's no way that the Jets are going to be the last team that Aaron Rodgers plays for. I'd be shocked. Like, I really do.
Situation, and he may end up in purple and gold all over again.
Yeah, I was just saying, I would seriously bet that it's more likely that Aaron Rodgers plays for the Minnesota Vikings before his career ends, as opposed to it just ends being a New York Jet. Like, I'd be shocked, absolutely shocked if that were the case. Aaron Rodgers, he's going to go down as a top 5 quarterback of all time. I do believe that at the point that he retires. Most people will think that. We can debate that, later, but I do think that's what his legacy will be when he retires.
Simply because, for those who don't know, Minnesota has not either reworked or extended Kirk Cousins, meaning that this could potentially be his last season in Minnesota, as it is indeed his last year on the deal. Ken, you told me off camera that you had a lot of stuff to do on Monday, which you did not want to do. So please share with us your thoughts. What is Aaron Rodgers' legacy going to be, at least for you?
So Aaron Rodgers is going to be a legend. There's no two ways about it. You're going to look at the numbers and his coaching stats, and there's nothing that you'll be able to take away from what Rodgers has been able to accomplish, except for the fact that he still only has one Super Bowl. He's only been to one Super Bowl. He's moving now from the Green Bay Packers and heading to the AFC, where the quarterback competition is a hell of a lot stiffer than it is over in the NFC, which means that his path to the Super Bowl has just gotten a lot harder, not easier. So when you take all of this into consideration, it's going to be difficult to properly place Aaron Rodgers in terms of what his legacy is going to be, depending on who you ask. Because right now, but there must be many people who don't, but yeah, you live close to Green Bay. You live in Wisconsin. So those who are in that neck of the woods, Some of them will love him for what he has done, and there are others who will hate him for what he has said and done off the field, which makes his legacy very complicated. Outside of Green Bay in the NFC, well, I know San Francisco, they probably hate his guts because, except for when they meet in the playoffs, they had a time where Rodgers used to dominate against the 49ers. In the wider NFC picture, we know that he has had extremely good numbers. His accuracy has usually been pretty good. His interception to touchdown ratio has been stellar. So all of these things work in his favor. But when we think of Aaron Rodgers and his legacy in totality, which includes then what happened off the field, then it gets a whole lot more complicated.
Like that word complicated. I think I may use that just shortly. Hayden, same question.
I kind of agree with Brian here, not necessarily with the Brett Favre comparison, but I do agree with the fact that Aaron Rodgers is going to go down as the guy that had all the talent in the world. Like, if you could pick an arm for a while there, Aaron Rodgers was the best arm in the NFL in terms of accuracy, not strongest arm, but just could make every throw with absolute pinpoint accuracy every time, consistently. He had that, and he still does to an extent. I mean, it's a little. Last season was a little rocky for him, but he's going to be that guy that had all the talent in the world, and everyone's going to be like, why didn't he win that much? The name that comes to mind to me is Dan Marino. Now that's an era even further past mine. I don't even remember him at all. I only hear from what my dad says. And basically, my dad has told me that Marino had the golden arm, could make every throw on the field, but he was a little bit edgy. His teammates had a hard time dealing with him. And it's the same thing with Rodgers. Rodgers is that guy. He has the goal, but he just is hard to get along with. And it's not that Green Bay has had terrible guys around him. It's just he can't inspire the team just like Tom Brady did and these other guys have in terms of leadership.
So there's a reason why I like Ken terminology. And by the way, I do agree with all three of you. But to quote former general manager who passed away a couple of years ago, guy who drafted him, so he would know him best, the late Ted Thompson. Aaron Rodgers is a complicated fella. So let's start with the good, as they all say. And the thing is, you can't say it's all good without, mentioning bad. For me, and I'm going to give away my hand, he is a top 5, top 6 quarterback, top 10 very worst, wherever you put him. And then when you look at his stats, they're extremely gaudy. So he's first all time in touchdown to interception ratio. For me, when I look at him, he's the guy who redefined what taking care of the football is. I know Brian thinks he took care of the football a bit too much and that cost us wins, and he's probably right. But for me, he's the guy who redefined not turning over the football, the most important trait of a quarterback. Then when you look at it, I think he's second all time in career passer rating, behind only Patrick Mahomes right now. For a list, 5th all time in touchdowns, 6th all time in wins, 9th all time in yards, 4-time MVP, Super Bowl MVP, Super Bowl champ. You can go on and on. That is a resume of the very worst top 6, top 7 quarterback of all time in my estimation. But I can't list you all those stats and then not tell you the opposite side. And without going into his persona off the field, let's talk about, y'all correctly said he only made one Super Bowl, only won one. And then the lack of playoff success, I think, coupled with all of his not turning over the football, will be his lasting legacy. I think going to the Super Bowl and winning it, would you all guys know he has a 7-9 career playoff record after that. So a career record of 12-10 overall in playoffs. His 16 starts in the playoffs, not making a Super Bowl. So he has started 16 games since making his last Super Bowl. Is the longest streak by any quarterback, and that is by a particular mile. So Dan Marino would own that forever, but that's not the case. Here's where it also gets tricky for Aaron Rodgers. Peyton, I'm about to age myself or make you feel even younger. Back in the day, it was thought in the playoffs, especially in January and February, you could not win in Lambeau as a visiting team. Aaron Rodgers has 4 losses in Lambeau in a place where not only visiting teams didn't want to come to, but they always saw it as a house of horrors. Like, you're going to Lambeau, you're going to lose. Well, he has 4 losses at Lambeau in the playoffs. On top of that, I think he's lost his last 2 games at Lambeau in the playoffs. And that's not including what I determined to be a playoff game against Detroit this last season that would have put in the playoffs. He lost that as well. So if you want to include that, that's 5 losses in a row at Lambeau Field, or sorry, 3 losses in a row at Lambeau Field, 5 in must-win games. That is a bad look. And then how he's leaving Green Bay, as much as he's seeing there isn't bad blood. And you get on Pat McAfee, right? And you say certain things like he's not the hold up in the trade, that the Packers are expecting too much. And then, he's making it seem like, oh, well, the Packers are the one that are forcing me out because they're going to Jordan Love. And they said this in so many terms. It is playing the victim in a situation where we all know you're not exactly the victim here. And it can go on and on, but no one's come on this show to hear me wax politically about Aaron Rodgers. So Ken, I already know what Brian feels about Aaron Rodgers, so I'm going to leave him for last on this one. Ken, considering all of you said, where do you rank Aaron Rodgers all time among quarterbacks?
Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I have him 9th, and I can give you all 9 names. Where Marino is 10th.
No one wants to hear numbers.
Okay, so I begrudgingly said Brady won because I'm not a fan, but his numbers are his numbers, and we can't take that away. So Brady won, Montana 2, Peyton Manning 3, Drew Brees 4, Patrick Mahomes 5, John Elway 6, Steve Young 7, Brett Favre 8, Aaron Rodgers 9, Dan Marino 10.
Hype for Drew Brees there, though. Ooh.
I know that a lot of people might think that, but I know why I have Mr. Brees there, and it's not just because of my Saints fandom. It is when you look at the fact that if he and Brady retired at the same time, he would have been the all-time passing leader. He would have had the most touchdowns in NFL history. He possesses the most 5,000-yard passing seasons in NFL history. His resume, yes, 1 Super Bowl appearance, 1 Super Bowl win, 1 Super Bowl MVP. I can understand why that would be a knock against him for some. I mean, the Saints had some horrible teams with some horrible defenses, but at least our offense was legit. So I can see Breeze coming in the top 5 based on those numbers. But when I initially did this list, to be honest, I actually had Favre below Rodgers, but not to give away something that is going to come later. After doing a little bit more research, I had to go and change the order.
Interesting. We're going to get to that. I think that's the next segment. Aiden, these are a lot of quarterbacks you didn't see, but where do you rank Aaron Rodgers all time? Mike is still muted.
My apologies. I currently have Rodgers at 8th all time, behind Brady, Peyton Manning, Montana, Mahomes, Elway, Johnny Unitas, Drew Brees. That's it. And the reason being is Rodgers, yes, he has the accolades of the best touchdown interception ratio of all time and this and that, but he didn't seem to capitalize in the big moments like you alluded to, Justin. He never seemed to just come alive. We've seen him do it in the regular season. Like, when he has those amazing 2-minute drills all the time in the regular season. Where is that when you need him most in the postseason? And for whatever reason, whether it be luck, whether it just hasn't happened, it hasn't happened. And for a lot of these other guys, it has. And I just don't know how you can put him. I mean, it's no disrespect. We're still saying he's a top 10 quarterback of all time. That's pretty amazing. But I don't know how, when it's all said and done, if we just summed it up right now, because whatever he does in New York, it doesn't matter because it hasn't happened yet. This is what we have to judge his career based off of right now. He's 8th right now. Now, if he goes out and has postseason success with New York, he'll crack the top 5, and there's no doubt about that. It's just the amount of guys that have one Super Bowl, like Nick Foles has a Super Bowl. You know, there's guys that have one Super Bowl that are, you know, okay, like Trent Dilfer has one. But once you get 2, you're in a different category. And right now, you can't be top 5 without 2, I feel like.
Brian's going to destroy this argument. No, I kind of feel it. Brian, where's Aaron Rodgers all time? And please list your top 10.
Yeah, okay. The thing is, it's all about what do you mean by, you know, where does he rank? Because I think, and if you just ask me that plain question, I'd probably say 5th, to be honest. And everybody who's followed any of my content knows I'm not like, oh, an Aaron Rodgers fanboy in any way. But I would have Brady, Manning, Montana, and I would include Johnny Unitas. I think those 4 are above him. I'm not going to include Mahomes right now. I understand there's a case, but to me, not only is he an active player, I get Rodgers as an active player too, but like we've not even seen a third of his career, so I just want to hold off on Mahomes. But then the next question is, especially I think about this as a coach, like should the ranking be who you would actually pick to be the quarterback for your team? Because then Rodgers is going to slide way down that list, which I don't think is an accurate depiction maybe of his career and of his talent. And I really do think that would play out for not every coach. Of course, a lot of coaches might pick him first. But I do think overall, generally speaking, he would slide down that list. And I think then it becomes a discussion. Like, I think people would pick the 4 guys I named. I think they're picking Drew Brees over him for sure. John Elway over him for sure. Steve Young over him for sure. Let alone if you want to go to like Otto Graham, Frank Tarkenton. It depends. You know, a lot of people just kind of leave those generations just off the lists. But I do think he probably falls out of the top 10 if that's how you look at it. You know, who would you really want quarterbacking your team? If I had to give a full top 10, I'd probably go with those 5 that I named. So Brady, Manning, Joe Montana, Johnny Unitas, Aaron Rodgers. I'll probably go with John Elway, Steve Young, Drew Brees. I got to give Otto Graham. I got to get him on the list. I know he played in like the 40s, but I got to get him on the list. Then that 10th guy is pretty tough. I might have to go with Brett Favre, which I know Dan Marino's the guy missing, but I guess that's tough.
It is tough. Yeah, I'm wearing his jersey right now, so what I'm about to say may not shock some. I'm going to start of the people who I have above him, and I think it's like obvious there's a big 3 in this. You have Tom Brady. For me, I have Joe at 2, Peyton Manning at 3. Now, this is where, for me, the list kind of gets muddied. Like, how do you separate the rest? And this is why I give Ken a side eye with Drew Brees, because when you list all of those players, all of them have one thing in common that Drew Brees does not have. And I see Brian in his content allude to this often. What determines, for me, the greatness of a quarterback is not his stats, but where you lie with your peers. And part of Drew Brees' issue, for me at least, is he doesn't have a regular season MVP. Go ahead, Ken.
So I knew that this was going to come up, right? Because, yes, Drew Brees does not have a regular season MVP. That is fact. However, when you consider the fact that a lot of the seasons where Drew had those 5,000 passing yard seasons, where he was by far the best passer in the league, is when we had 0 defense and we finished 7-9. I think it was 3 seasons in a row. And of those 3 seasons, he had 5,000-yard passing seasons, the first and the third. So there is no way that a quarterback is going to get the MVP of the league when his team has a losing record. And for a while, the Saints struggled. And as a result, there's no way he would have gotten the MVP. But take any of those seasons, right? And say we actually went 12-4, 13-3. He would have been MVP. And then the next time that he had an opportunity at MVP, he was up against Patrick Mahomes, who also had a fantastic season and went on to win the Super Bowl. So there's no way that he would have gotten an MVP in that case.
No argument there. Oh, go ahead, Peyton. I see Peyton itching, but I know what. Sorry, not Peyton. Sorry, I know Brian wants to jump in. So go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you're not really wrong with any of that. I think really that's the case for Peyton Manning. People who like love Peyton Manning and want to at least put him second is basically think about what he would have accomplished if Tom Brady didn't exist. Like it would have been just absolutely insane stuff. But simply the case against Drew Brees, at least for being like really, really high and above Aaron Rodgers, is that Drew Brees, I think, is at best the third best quarterback of his generation. So I think if we're including multiple generations in an all-time ranking, it's tough for me to put a guy who was at least third, arguably fourth in his generation into, a top 5 overall.
And that's my thing, right? To be the best, you have to beat the best. And this is why, Peyton Manning found ways to win MVPs during the time Tom Brady played. So to the Aaron Rodgers. So as I said, everyone's undisputable top 3 is going to be, for me, in order is Tom Brady, Joe Montana, and then Peyton Manning. I heard what Brian said, but I can't leave out Patrick Mahomes simply because, and I have him at 4, by the way. When you look through the list, right, there are only 3 quarterbacks all time who have multiple regular season MVPs, multiple Super Bowls, and multiple Super Bowl MVPs. And when you're in a list with Tom Brady and Joe Montana, yeah, I'm going to have to slide Patrick right there. And it's not like the Chiefs win because of defense or other stuff. He is the man. He is the reason. Not 1B or 2A. He is the 1A, the reason the Chiefs win and have the success of 5 straight AFC title games. And what we can argue is currently a dynasty. I know Ken is going to smile when he uses that word dynasty with the Chiefs. But yeah, then here's where it gets funny for me. So Patrick Mahomes at 4. It's hard for me. I think I have John Elway at 5 because of what Brian mentioned in terms of leadership. And then Aaron Rodgers at 6. And the reason I have Rodgers slightly that high is when I look at everyone else. So you're going to toss him in a pool of, y'all did not mention Roger Staubach. I'm very disappointed in this group. Roger Staubach has to be in the list here. So we talk about Roger Staubach, Steve Young, and Dan Marino. Like, what separates Rodgers from me? Because Staubach has 2 Super Bowls, but Rodgers has those 4 MVPs. Yes, only regular season, but at the end of the day, in an era that had Peyton Manning, an era that had Tom Brady and had Drew Brees, this guy was able time and time again to say, for 4 seasons, for a definitive fact, I was the best quarterback while y'all were still playing. Like, that holds weight for me, right? And you're playing again in arguably the greatest quarterback era, even then with Patrick Mahomes at his best. He was still able to win 2 MVPs. Again, he's going to be 6 and no higher because, again, we mentioned the lack of playoff success and doing it when it matters most, right? But yeah, I have him above Drees because Drees has been to the same amount of Super Bowls that he has. But again, you are not separating yourself from the peers during the regular season. He did. And again, I'm not saying that Ken and Peyton are wrong, but yeah, they're wrong. I'm going to go with my guy at 6. After that, it still gets muddied for me. Like, where do I put Steve Young? Where do I put Dan Marino? Where do I put Otto Graham, as you mentioned? Where do I put somebody like Joe Namath? I have no idea. I stopped at Aaron Rodgers at 6 and was like, let somebody else figure that out. Go ahead, Pete.
It's just ranking quarterbacks all time is impossible because there's eras that you have to take into consideration. You do have to take it into consideration that some of these guys weren't attempting passes And not only that, but even just starting off as throughout development through high school, these guys, these quarterbacks now are getting coaching from when they were like babies to men. I mean, it's insane what is going on in this era of football. So it's hard to adjust statistics through the ages, and then then you get into guys like Unitas. Like I put Unitas in there, but they're playing what 14 games. Half of his career was played before the Super Bowl era. It's just it gets hard, and it's what do you assess more, talent or winning? And then you have to kind of find a balance there because talent wise, Aaron Rodgers is undoubtedly top 3. I feel like, but you add in all the other factors, and it kind of weighs
So
him
that's
down a
why
little bit more.
I did not mention stats in this category purposely. Because again, as you mentioned, eras like Joe Namath, autogram, like it's kind of hard to measure up stats. And that's why, and I'm glad, I talked to Brian about these things. You look at your peers, and that's why you have to bring in somebody like Johnny Unitas, because in his time, he was undoubtedly the best of his era. And that's why I have somebody like Bart Starr just outside, because again, his stats are not great, but undoubtedly the best of his era. Like you look at that situation, and that's why I have Breeze towards the back end of the 10 as opposed to the top end, because the accolades, forget the stats, the accolades will tell you this guy was the best of his era. And that's why, I also have to put Brett Favre in that 10, because in an era that had Frank Aikman, had Steve Young, had Dan Marino, this guy was able to win 3 straight MVPs. Also with an era with John Elway, 3 straight MVPs, 2 straight Super Bowl appearances, won one of them. Can't overlook these things. Like the accolades will tell you this guy was the best of his generation. That's why we can talk all we want like Justin Herbert and go on, but like Patrick Mahomes is a mile above these guys. 2 MVPs, 2 Super Bowl MVPs, 2 Super Bowl trophies. Like the accolades will tell you how to separate these guys. I feel I'm about to miss something. Oh, speaking about separating guys, gentlemen. Well, I just mentioned 2 of them. Went from one Packer legend in Brett Favre to the other Aaron Rodgers, and while we cut it up, one has, one set of Packer or Packer records, and the other one probably has the other. We're talking about 31, 32 straight years of Hall of Fame quarterback play, but can't talk about Aaron Rodgers without talking about Brett Favre. Can't talk about Brett Favre without Aaron Rodgers. So Hayden has had the better Green Bay career.
It's Aaron Rodgers. Brett Favre was fun in his day. I know everyone. I've heard the stories basically and the legends, but was the anti-Brett Favre. He proved to the world that you could be a gunslinger and put up a bunch of numbers while also throwing absolutely no interceptions. He was the anti-Brett Favre. Brett Favre was the guy who was just throwing it. He was just out there like it was the backyard, just throwing it. Aaron Rodgers was the guy that was playing it safe and still could make the deep plays when called upon. He also had a longer career in Green Bay. We all just ranked him above Brett Favre in our all-time list, so I feel like that's good enough. I feel like, or I think Ken had Brett Favre before Aaron Rodgers, actually. So Ken probably is going to disagree, but how could I say that it's Brett Favre when I just put Aaron Rodgers above him all time? I just feel like he was better at taking care of the football. They have the same amount of Super Bowls. He played longer in Green Bay. They have, I think, who has more yards now? Is it Rodgers? Is it Rodgers? Or it's Favre still? Okay, great. But Rodgers will pass him eventually. It's just, it's got to be Rodgers.
Okay, go right ahead. Explain to us why you have Favre or Rodgers as a better Packer career.
Okay, no problem. So bear with me a moment, fellas.
Where we got time.
All right, so we look at the number of seasons that both of them have been in Green Bay. Rodgers has 18, Favre has 16. If we look at the number of years that they've played in Green Bay, they're even. Because don't forget, Rodgers rode the pine for a couple of years before Brett decided, before the Packers decided that Brett, it's time for you to roll out of town, and then they gave the keys to the kingdom to Aaron Rodgers. So it's really 16-16 if you're looking at how many years they've actually played. So I'll just list the statistics that go in Brett Favre's favor. He's played less seasons, albeit when you add the two that Rodgers was right in the point. He's played more games, he has more wins, he has more yards, he's taken less sacks, he has one more All-Pro selection, one more Super Bowl appearance, better win percentage in the postseason on the same number of games. So that was the synopsis. Synopsis. When you look at what they did in the time that they have been in Green Bay and actually playing for the Packers, when you take into consideration too that the era in which Brett Favre played in, the rules were not what the rules are now, nor were they passing the football like they're passing the football now. When you look at the number of attempts that he himself had, his completion percentage is less than Rodgers, and of course, his interceptions are by far higher. But what he was able to do during that time, even with the recklessness, because by no means can we ever say Brett Favre was not reckless with the football. He is what Jameis Winston aspired to be and then surpassed. You take all of that and you look at what they have been able to do in the green and gold. I'm sorry, but number four takes it. Number four, in an era where things would have been more difficult than what 12 has been able to do. If for not, I mean, you can say, yes, 12 has one more MVP, but 4 has one more appearance in the game that matters the most, which is the Super Bowl. So for that reason, and everything else I just said, I give it to Favre over Rodgers in Green Bay.
Yeah, beat you there, and you did have Favre above Rodgers in your all-time ranking. I don't. Well, I mean, Brian also had its all-time ranking, so I'm guessing he's going to say Aaron Rodgers over Brett Favre, or do we have a surprise?
Yeah, no, I think Ken one makes a good point that I think a lot of younger NFL fans wouldn't know, that there actually is a statistical case for Brett Favre to be over Aaron Rodgers. Now, again, the thing for Aaron Rodgers is going to be all about the lack of interceptions and a lot of your like advanced analytics. The case against Rodgers is that like everything that he's doing is going to just get blown out of the water, which proves the point that, Peyton was talking about before, like eras really matter. And like Ken was saying, like they played in 2 different eras. It's much harder for Favre, schematically, rules wise, everything. What I would chalk it up to is I think people of Favre's generation will talk much more highly of him than people of Aaron Rodgers' generation. I think that's what it comes down to. And I think that's the separating factor. So when you talk about the better Green Bay legacy, I think that's actually going to be Brett Favre. Regardless of ranking, I think people, of that generation will think more highly of him. And I think it's actually for the reason that Peyton was saying, like, he's a gunslinger. It's the reason we have so many movies about like those kind of characters, back to like the Old West and the cowboys to, your new age kind of action figures. It's like, there's just a respect that goes with it. Like if I'm going down slinging. And he did. Like when he failed in the playoffs, it was a pick every time. But like people will ride with that. Like, hey, that's my quarterback. Where Aaron Rodgers, I think it's a tougher pill to swallow, fair or right, or fair, or not. The narrative that like he's too cautious. And it seems to have hurt them in the playoffs, where all of a sudden they aren't scoring as much points as really they should. Again, it could not be fair, but I really do think that people will ride with Favre over Aaron Rodgers. I think that's what it comes down to.
So that's an interesting perspective, Brian, because it does indeed matter who you ask. So if you ask somebody outside of Wisconsin, or if you ask a kid in this area who has only known Aaron Rodgers as their starting quarterback, they'll tell you Aaron Rodgers. And if you go numbers and stat ways, then obviously it's Aaron Rodgers for everything that y'all mentioned. You know, fewer interceptions by a mile and all these, more touchdowns, better passer rating, go on and on and on and on. Then more MVPs, more accolades, like all of those numbers lead towards Aaron Rodgers. But I was very smart in asking the better Packer career because individually, yeah, and I have Aaron Rodgers above Brett Favre in my all-time rankings. But here's the thing, right? If you ask somebody in Wisconsin, they're going to tell you Favre. And the reason why, and they'll be right in saying so, just look at what happened prior to each man. Favre came in a situation, or let me go back. Why this place is called Title Town? During the 60s, the Lombardi Starr era, this team was absolutely dominant. I think they have like 11 NFL titles, the first two Super Bowls. Like this was where titles were born, Title Town. What a lot of people don't know is after the Lombardi Starr era, my gosh, it was terrible. No one wanted to come here. Like the 70s and 80s are a period that no one talks about in this place. Like absolutely no one brings up the 70s and 80s. It was terrible. Bart Starr was general manager and coach at one point, and it was atrocious. Then general manager Ron Wolf comes in, and the first thing he does, he trades first round pick that everyone was so upset for this third string backup in the Atlanta Falcons named Brett Favre. And everything turns. This guy makes Green Bay relevant all over again. And I'm not saying he did it by himself, but again, if you're talking about reasons, Brett Favre is 1A to everything else. Then, we win free agency, and the first player to ever move in free agency is none other than the late, great Reggie White. That is partly to do because you actually have a quarterback on a team that can win. And you go from this lowly franchise that no one wants to play for to a team that starts to dismantle the Cowboys as the team of the NFC. Like you're talking about back then, it was the Cowboys and the 49ers, and all of a sudden, number 4 changes the trajectory of the NFC, and everything goes through Green Bay. For Green Bay legacy, it is Brett Favre for overcoming the 80s and the 70s. And this is nothing against Aaron Rodgers, but it's a bit different because he's picking up on Brett Favre's legacy. Like you get there, and this is a team already built to win, and you get there, you take over from that. You're not coming to a franchise where no one wants to go to. Well, people still don't want to go to Green Bay, but this is not a franchise that everyone's laughing at and looking at anymore. This is now the gold standard of the NFC when you take over. Brett Favre can say, I am the guy who made this franchise the gold standard. And when you look at personalities then, Brett Favre's happy-go-lucky, run-of-the-mill, the kind of down-to-earth guy fits the ethos of Wisconsin. We know Aaron Rodgers is not that dude. Like, what do you want to say? Aaron Rodgers, California boy, elite-looking weight, does not sit well with Wisconsinites. And the one thing I've understood from moving here, the worst thing you could do to a Wisconsinite is make it feel that you don't want to be here. Brett Favre was pushed out because he kept waffling with retirement. Aaron Rodgers, year after year, despite the franchise showing a level of commitment to him, not the Jordan Love drafting, but subsequent giving him a huge contract. And still you're hearing, I don't know if the franchise loves me. I don't get enough respect. Blah, 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 blah. That weirds all Wisconsinites. They don't want to hear that. He is not viewed as a man of the people. And I can speak to something personally now. I went to Packers softball charity game. Everyone looks forward to it. Donald Driver has one, and the team itself has one. I think I went to the teams. I'm not here to speak on the guy's character, but obviously Aaron Rodgers is the guy everyone wants. It's coming to see. Aaron Rodgers came in when the game was almost halfway through, snuck in through the back door of the team's, I don't know, locker room area, came in during the game halfway through his status, and left before the game was done to avoid fans. There is no way Brett Favre would have ever done that in his time in Green Bay. Absolutely no way. And it speaks to your connection to the people within Wisconsin. So better quarterback, better individual numbers. I'm going to go with Aaron Rodgers all day, obviously. Better Parker career / legacy. I'm going to lean towards a man that I almost want to say defines green and gold in this modern era of we call football. So, gentlemen, though, we're still all in agreement that Aaron Rodgers is a top 10 quarterback of all time. So, Ken, considering that and the team has had 31, 32 straight years of Hall of Fame quarterback play, is the team right in moving on from a top 10 quarterback right now?
Absolutely. That's the short answer. Absolutely. Absolutely. So, I don't know about you other esteemed gentlemen, but I'm sure that you may relate to a short tale I'm about to tell. It's about a guy who has a girlfriend. She's the prettiest thing on the block. And likes to see when he comes out with his girl because she is so fantastic. She's charming. She's the sweetest thing ever. Her voice is pleasant. She has a nice accent. Everything that they can see is wonderful with
You're
this
talking
girl.
about the white right, Ken?
Huh? No,
You're
no, no, no,
talking
no. I'm not talking about the wife because behind closed doors, this woman is such a headache. She doesn't like to do anything. She comes home, she just lets herself go. She doesn't try to. I'm trying to be very polite and politically correct here because I'm not here saying that a woman has to do X or Y, but she does nothing. All she does is nag and complain. Nothing is ever good enough. And you know what happens eventually? The man gets sick and tired of putting up with her crap and tells her, "Now, sweetheart, it is time for you to go." That is Green Bay and Aaron Rodgers. Because most franchises would have looked at what Aaron Rodgers has done throughout his career and said, you know, we could have done with some of that. That would have looked real good on my arm, and that Lombardi trophy would look real good on my mantle. But when you take into consideration the headaches that Justin just mentioned, when you look at how he has not ingratiated himself properly, even with the fan base that is cheering for him every week, are buying his jerseys, and also doing everything to make him one of the highest earners in NFL history. You have a contract, sir, for $60 million. And you're coming out here telling people, oh, I'm not sure if I'm coming back. I have to go and sit in the dark for 4 days and decide if I even want to play football anymore. Well, I mean, that sounds kind of Ben Simmons-ish, but that's a story for another day. Aaron Rodgers has not done enough for the 18 years that he's been in Green Bay to build up enough goodwill that he has not already thrown it all away. As good as he's played every season, he has been mostly healthy. He has not had a lot of off-field issues of a legal variety. He has done everything that lets them know that he does not want to be there. How do you invest that amount of money into a man that shows you every single time that he does not want to be there? That what they did last season or at the end of last season was the equivalent of the gentleman in my story at the beginning giving this miserable woman a wedding ring and now having to pay all of this money just to get rid of her when you could have gotten rid of her for free. No, it is time. It has been time for Aaron Rodgers to get out of Green Bay.
Aiden, all three of us are married, so this is a warning to you. Be careful of the beautiful girl that wants everything and gives you very little. Go ahead, P. Do you believe that the Green Bay Packers are right in moving on from Aaron Rodgers right now?
I definitely do, and Ken said it best as we just heard of all the moments leading up to this moment. But he already said he doesn't want to be there. It's clear that he doesn't want to be there. So once that's clear to both parties, it's time to move on. And even if Jordan Love isn't it, which we know he's not it, because if he was it, Aaron Rodgers wouldn't be there by now, like I always like to say. But even if Jordan Love's not it, it's not going to be Rodgers. Rodgers isn't it for the future. You have to move on and start finding another quarterback of the future, because Rodgers has made it clear that he doesn't want to be there after his darkness retreat to recover from taking shrooms for the past 2 years. He decided that he doesn't want to play, or he doesn't want to play for you anymore. So you have to trade him, plain and simple.
Agree, or is it like a sweeping yes across the board? Green Bay Packers just had to move on.
I mean, I think it comes down to what they get for him. I do think that plays a factor in this. I don't think they're necessarily wrong for wanting to move on or for agreeing to move on, whatever the case may be. But it is, I'm just somebody who, with really any of these great quarterbacks, great players across sports, I'm probably going to be one of the last to the party in terms of, yeah, this thing's over. Just because if the Aaron Rodgers fanboys are right, like, he's going to win multiple Super Bowls with the Jets and another MVP. And the truth is, like, if he's anything like Tom Brady, just in terms of longevity, like, the Jets are good enough, if he's an MVP type of quarterback, to win a Super Bowl. Like, that's very realistic. And if he's anything like Tom Brady in terms of longevity, he's got like 6 more really good years, which sounds kind of crazy to say. Time will tell if Tom Brady is still a bit of an outlier or just the first of a generation, I guess, to extend careers that way. I would be, if I was if I was a Packers fan, I would be excited for the future, but nervous for Aaron Rodgers' future, if that makes sense.
I don't care what he does.
There's not a little bit of FOMO with the
I know. So we have a thing of all the franchises, and I mean, tradition does set apart, and that's why you see certain clubs are forever bad, and there are certain clubs that are actually always good, because there's culture. And part of this Packers tradition culture, and trust and believe that the Packers have not strayed away from their culture of the 60s and 70s till now, is that we tend to move on from players a year too early rather than a year too late. And I will say this, I think in this situation, we may have moved on a year too late. Now, of course, that's easy for me to say right now, because what happened last season, Aaron Rodgers arguably had his worst season as a starter, and the team missed the playoffs, and not just missed the playoffs, but lost to the Detroit Lions at home to miss the playoffs. So obviously, it's easy for me to say right now we waited a year too late. But the contract, man, and a hint towards Brian's point, imagine if we had moved him on the last off season and not this one. What we would be able to command for him would be so much more than what we are likely to get back from New York, simply because he was coming off his second successive MVP season. Like, you would be telling yourself, I am giving you the reigning 2-time MVP. You got to be giving me the king's ransom. So this is complicated about what I'm about to say. I think part of this, in moving on, Packers also have a culture of looking at the future while mortgaging the present at the same time. And I think we made a mistake in there. And I don't blame Gutekunst partly in drafting Jordan Love anymore, simply because, again, when he did that, that was coming off another Aaron Rodgers down season. Like, people tend to forget that. Aaron, it was not good, and we missed the playoffs. Or sorry, no, we made the playoffs, but Aaron was not exactly good. Good thought here is Aaron Rodgers, potential heir sitting right here. Let's go get him because we don't know when we will be bad enough again to get a good level quarterback. So I don't necessarily blame him for getting him there, but obviously people will say you didn't give Aaron Rodgers or you didn't invest in the present as much as you were looking forward to the future. But you had to look at the future at some point because you have history to tell you. You knew you were behind the 8 ball in terms of when you looked at Brett Favre. When you drafted Aaron Rodgers, he would have been about 13, 14 years into his career, and you knew that this was the back end of his career. With Aaron Rodgers, you have to ask yourself, how much more can you hope for MVP caliber play before you have to start looking at the game's most important position? So, Peyton, like you know, I was not high on Jordan Love, and I hated the Jordan Love drafting, not because we drafted a quarterback, but we drafted that one, right? So I'll give you a piece of history, and the reason I think the Packers are right in moving on right now, even though they should have moved on a year earlier. Y'all may not have known, right? And there's his final season on the bench behind Brett Favre. Brett got hurt in the Dallas game, and both teams were 10-1 at the time. And Aaron Rodgers stepped in, and I think it hit brass at the time. We're good. Like, Aaron Rodgers was that good in the game, and we lost the game, but in the top brass's mind, you could see them saying, yeah, we're good. Time to move on. And I think, gentlemen, the exact same thing happened this season. I think when Aaron went down against Philadelphia and Jordan Love stepped in, I think it was at that moment that Gutekunst looked, Mark Murphy looked, and Matt LaFleur looked on the field and realized, yeah, we're going to be good. I think at that very moment against Philadelphia on the road, and again, we lost that game by 1 score, but we were trailing the entire way, and Jordan Love played the situation to get us and keep that game close. I think he tied the game at one point with a touchdown to Christian Watson. I think it was at that moment they said, yeah, we're going to be good. And if you hang on to Aaron Rodgers any longer, you've already given this guy a 3-year extension. Ken mentioned $60 million guaranteed for this upcoming season. And you could not get a commitment from this guy. Because despite what Aaron Rodgers would tell you about the Packers pushing him out, remember he said in his own words, before I went into darkness retreat, I was 90% leaning towards retirement. I am sure Mark Murphy and Brian Gutekunst wanted this guy to be committed. And how can you be committed to a quarterback who is telling you about retirement? And every season, no matter what you do, he is looking not to be committed to this team. I'm not telling you Jordan Love is going to repeat and be what Aaron Rodgers was to Brett Favre, but I think you have to find out. And you can't mortgage your future any longer thinking this guy is going to be continuing to be a Hall of Fame quarterback, because Tom Brady did it, yes, but Tom Brady is likely an outlier. We're talking the greatest quarterback of all time. We have not seen many situations where quarterbacks continually dominant in their 40s. They said, we're going to be fine with with Jordan Love and his run first offense. Brian, it seemed like you wanted to jump in.
Yeah, I think the contract is a good point, and I do think that the Packers feel great about Jordan Love. But the devil's advocate kind of side of it is, if Jordan Love plays like Aaron Rodgers did last year, they're going to be paying him $45 million a year moving forward. Like, I mean, immediately after the season, he's going to ink a deal that's like 4 years, $180 million, with probably like 120 guaranteed.
Remember, they still have an extra year of him because he's a first-round draft pick. So they can ink him to that, or you have to, that 4th year guaranteed, which is at $20 million. So you still have another year to play around with.
They could. You're right. They could. I just think typically how these deals work is like with Daniel Jones. I know they declined his, but typically they go ahead and sign that contract extension the year before. You know what I mean? They usually don't pick up the 5th-year option and ride it out without restructuring the contract or extending the quarterback unless they like really don't want to re-sign him.
No, there's one other thing, Justin, before we move on, I did want to add. I went on a little long with my previous analogy. But if you look at how the Packers team is currently constructed and what they're mostly going to have to do because of that albatross of a contract that Aaron Rodgers has, you can't really get involved in the free agency market because you don't have money to pay anybody, which means that you're going to have to then try to continue to build your team through the draft. And we know very well that Aaron Rodgers does not play well with kids, as I keep saying. He is the NFL Jose Mourinho. So therefore, when you have all of these young wide receivers who are now going to have to build out that wide receiver room, because I'd like to think that the Packers, having seen Randall Cobb again, would not want to bring him back next season. So regardless of if he were to end up with the Jets or not, and that is both Rodgers and Cobb, there would be no room for Cobb again in Lambeau Field. So no, you're telling Rodgers that we're going to jettison another one of your favorite wide receivers, and we're going to then replace him with another kid where you know that he's probably going to throw the ball to him in week 1, first ball of the season. He's going to drop it, and then he's going to drop out of the rotation until like week 8 or week 9 when everybody else gets hurt. He has no choice but to throw the ball to him anyway.
Shout out to Christian Watson as he detailed his entire 2023 season. So here's the thing, right, Ken, you're right. Just missing one point. Weirdly enough, Gutekunst has found a way, even with the albatross of the cap space that Aaron Rodgers has taken up. Would you know the team with the second most cap space entering free agency or currently in this free agency, Green Bay Packers, with $24 million of cap room? And well, we're going to get to this right now. So, Peyton, we're talking about a future Hall of Famer, maybe still a top 10 quarterback in the league, but he is 39 years old and has been dabbling with retirement for the last 3 seasons. It feels like, what should the trade compensation look like from the New York Jets?
I would say maximum 1 first-round pick. I would not give multiple first-round picks for Aaron Rodgers anymore. I would say, yes, he's coming off a year ago being the reigning back-to-back MVP. But like you said, Justin, he has mentioned wanting, or at least considering, retirement for the past 3 seasons now. He's coming off a year where he had his lowest passer rating of his career as a starter full-time. Showed a little bit of signs of decline last year. There's a lot of question marks there. And you don't have much leverage if you're the Packers in this situation, because he said, not only did he say he wants to leave, but he said who he wants to play for. And there's that as well, where, yes, certainly he's under contract. He's a Green Bay Packer. So they do have control of the situation, but they do not have maximum amount of leverage in this trade scenario. So I would say a first round pick, maybe throw in a second or a third, and like a couple fifths. Nothing ridiculously insane for Aaron Rodgers at this point in time. But you do have to throw in a first. I say anything less than a first is ridiculous, because that's a quarterback. That's a quarterback, and like you said, he's going to be a future Hall of Famer. He still has value. So anything less than a first is ridiculous, but anything more than 1 first-round pick is also a little bit too much, in my opinion.
To that point, Peyton, according to the rumors, New York Jets are not willing to even give 1 first-round pick, which would be number 13 in this year's draft. They don't want to. They want to go as high, and again, these are rumors, they want to go as high as possibly a second-round pick and a conditional second and third in next year's draft. Packers apparently, again, these are rumors, they are looking at what Detroit Lions got in the Matthew Stafford deal, which is 2 first-round picks and a player. And which one would you lean towards? What do you think is fair compensation for Aaron Rodgers at this point?
I think fair. I agree with Peyton. I think it's got to be at least a first and then probably a player. Like I could see it being a first round pick and Elijah Moore. Now I think one, it makes perfect sense to me why the Jets are really going to want to hold out on giving a first round pick because they're going to say, hey, this might be a 2-year rental. And like you said, the contract is no good. Yeah, it could even be one. And I'm sure that's what they're saying and you know, any kind of negotiation. But I just think the Packers, I know you guys are probably so happy to just be maybe done with it and move on that you might not care, but like it would be kind of sick if they got Aaron Rodgers for like a 3rd round pick just because of the contract and he's saying that he's going to retire. But I would not be shocked. I really wouldn't. But if I'm the Packers, Peyton's right. They don't have maximum leverage, but they do have the leverage in the situation. I do believe that. I think that they say it's a 1st round pick or it's not getting done. And Aaron Rodgers he's gonna sit the bench. Hey man, I guess you're just not playing this year. I think that's what they have to do. And I still see the Jets not wanting to give the 13th pick. So what I think is realistic is a 2nd round pick and then a conditional 1st round pick the next year, if that makes sense. So probably a playoff stipulation or at least a games played stipulation at the minimum. That's what's typical. Sometimes you see pass attempts also tacked on that. And if he hits that mark, then 1st round pick. If he doesn't, maybe a 2nd round pick. And I think that's good for the Packers. I think if you told most Packers fans, even if they got 2 2nd round picks and a low level starter, again, no shade towards like Elijah Moore, but no, I don't think anybody's freaking out about Elijah Moore. I think Packers fans would be happy with that deal and Jets fans would as well.
The wide receiver rumored is actually Corey Davis and not even Elijah Moore because of Corey Davis's time with the Tennessee Titans with our now head coach Matt LaFleur. But I have some outlandish deals, but I'll tell you just shortly. Again, fair compensation for a future Hall of Famer that is right now 39 years old.
So I'm definitely not going with the Matthew Stafford, Jared Goff, 2 first round picks and a 3rd rounder. That definitely is not going to happen if I am the Jets. That is definitely too much compensation to give up for a quarterback who's 39 years old, who may come to New York and then decide, I am done. I am not fleecing my franchise for a man who has publicly stated that he wants to come to me. Right now, honestly, I'm looking at this situation and nobody has leverage. Nobody has leverage in this situation. Aaron Rodgers doesn't have leverage because he has publicly come out and said that he wants to go to New York. He wants to play for the Jets. He's under contract for the next 2-3 years. The Jets don't have leverage because, well, they want Aaron Rodgers and they don't have a quarterback on their roster. So they need to find somebody to sit under center. And because they decided to dally in this deal, they allowed my Saints to bring in Derek Carr, who was at that point the best option on the market. They allowed, for some, the 2nd best option, Jimmy Garoppolo, to go over to Las Vegas. Jacoby Brissett seems to be stumping up somewhere else. Everybody right now is going everywhere, and they have nobody except for potentially Aaron Rodgers. So no, you can see that there's a certain level of desperation for those folks down in Jets land. And then the Packers, what leverage can they have? Their quarterbacks come out and say, I'm not playing here anymore. So, and not only am I not playing here anymore, but I want to go there. So everybody else now is looking at that and saying, well, obviously there's no reason for us to get involved because he doesn't want to play for us. He wants to play for the Jets. There goes all of the Packers' leverage. So nobody has any leverage. What I think the Packers could realistically ask for is a 1st round pick this year. Of course, number 13 is the one that is being discussed. I haven't looked through the draft order to see if the Jets potentially could have had another one. I don't think they do. So, but what the Packers could be looking for is a first round pick this year. They could also try to get a fourth round pick this year and then a second round pick next year. Because for someone of Aaron Rodgers' caliber, you would think that having these three picks, two picks this year, one pick next year, and a very high pick next year as well, could get the job done. But if I'm the Jets, I am guarding that number 13 pick with my life. That number 13 pick is getting better protection than Tom from Mike Evans when they had that fight with the Saints. There's no way that I'm giving up that number 13 pick. I would try to do a second round pick. I will probably do a pair of seconds, maybe a pair of seconds and a fourth next year, maybe. But they don't get number 13 from me. What how this all shakes out is you have to wait and see.
Just to add quickly to that, because I think you bring up a good point with the Jets. Like, they're really Aaron Rodgers or bust right now. They don't have anything. But I think, and you mentioned desperation, which I think is the key here, that I agree with you really 100%. Like, they aren't going to want to give up anything because they want to hold their side of the leverage. But I do think an added part to this, besides just they can't roll it back with Zach Wilson. They absolutely can't. And that's because of, what they've done. Of course, his play factored into that. But I mean, just how they've handled themselves as an organization. They can't go back to Zach Wilson. The fans would go crazy. But so it's not only like, oh, are they going to potentially be bad next year or kind of like waste a year of having a good roster? I think like Saleh and Joe Douglas are out. Like, if they were to be bad next year, they're getting fired. Everybody's clearing house. So I really do think the Packers are going to be able to play hardball here. I don't know what the trade compensation will be, but I do think the Jets should be the more desperate team to get a deal done, just in general.
And it's for that, Brian, because maybe it's my Packer bias. I think we have more leverage. We don't have total leverage, but I think we have more leverage than they. Because first, they need a quarterback. They don't have one on their roster. And though you don't have one when your players act like Mike White was Tom Brady when he got the starting job. Like, that's just to show you how much they do not want Zach Wilson to start. Like, there's no doubt about that. That's number one. Number two, look at all of the Jets' moves, and it tells you how they're behind the eight ball and the Packers have the leverage. They went out and got Nathaniel Hackett. They went and signed Alan Lazard to a 4-year deal. And to Brian's point, they have a playoff-ready roster. If they don't win right now, head coach and general manager, you are seeing sweeping changes. Furthermore, they already got rid of their offensive coordinator, who just so happened to be Matt LaFleur's baby brother, Mike LaFleur. So that tells you everything you need to know. This team is in win-now mode. Now, the Packers, the moves that the Packers have made so far, they don't exactly strike me as a team that's telling themselves, we have to get back in the playoffs. Matt LaFleur has a level of cachet with the team. He had 3 straight 13-win seasons. He's turning to a quarterback with no starting experience. Like, he has bought himself time. And the Packers can say, well, guess what? We have our quarterback. We can sit down Aaron Rodgers and say, well, you're not playing next year. Granted, you don't want to pay a quarterback $60 million to sit down and not play, but the reality is the Packers are not in a situation where they can win now. So they can tell themselves, we are in a situation, we are going to sit down and not play this dude. But we're not going to give him to you for nothing because you want him. We don't. So we can sit him down. We have Jordan Love, and we turn this team towards him. We are not in a position where we have to move this guy. We can just tell him, do not come around the franchise. Don't turn up. You already don't turn up to training camp. So just don't turn up. Don't turn up at the building. And we're moving forward. Unfortunately, yes, that will cast a cloud around the organization because Jordan Love will have to answer that every single day. I will say the Jets, one modicum of leverage is this. Packers are going to want draft compensation immediately. And that means like by April 17th, they're going to want that deal done. And the reason I say that and not for next year is because they figure if Aaron Rodgers is on the roster, the New York Jets are going to be a hell of a lot better, and that first round pick is not going to be number 13 like it is this year. So the Packers, in moving on, will feel pressure to get a pick in this draft. But again, Packers are not looking to win right now. So they're telling themselves, well, what are you going to do? So to all y'all guys, y'all made a mention, I think it has to be that number 13 overall pick and something else. But you can't justifiably pay a guy $60 million and then say you're giving him away for second round pick. Like, hell no. Especially when you are in no rush to move on from him because you already named your starting quarterback going on. But I'll let y'all jump in if y'all have anything else to add.
I mean, I agree with you, Justin. I do think that's kind of the justification there that the Jets, their main piece of leverage is just the timeline of this. Like the Packers got to make a move. And that could be the one bluff that they hold is, okay, well, whatever. We'll just get this done after this draft. And then the Packers have to wait another year.
And one more piece of leverage the Packers have in terms of timeline, even though the draft is working against them, is that, guys, Aaron Rodgers counts for $40 million to their cap if he's not traded, if he's still on the roster, or if he's traded before June 1st. If he's traded after June, you can spread that cap throughout 2 years and not just the one. So the Packers can say, all right, maybe we miss out on the draft, but the cap hit that we're going to take is significantly less if we trade him after June 1st. Go ahead, Peter.
No, I'm just shaking my head because this is just one unbelievable stalemate. This is Ken is right. No, who has leverage? Like nobody. There's no. It's impossible to make a deal when everyone is just kind of there. It's one big like orb, and no one can just do anything. It's just a big situation. It's just a mess.
Because when, not to sound petty, but if you stay petty, you don't have to be petty. What I love about it is that Aaron Rodgers has made these last 2-3 years everything about him. And now the Packers are like, it's not about you anymore. We hold the keys. Like for the last 3 years, Aaron Rodgers has been the one calling the shots. And no, it's not the dude calling the shots anymore.
The only thing that he has really, well, of all of them though, he's guaranteed his money. So play in New York, sit on the bench in Green Bay, don't turn up to Green Bay. Whatever happens, he is going to the bank and his check is going to be there every week. So he is comfortable. It is now for the two organizations to basically say, listen, I understand your heels are dug in, my heels are dug in too. Let's just find a way to get this over the line so we can both move on. And as you said, Justin, if the deal is done this season and they do get the number one pick, number 13 this season is not going to be number 13 next season. They're going to be probably picking somewhere in the 20s at the earliest, they would hope. So from that perspective, the two organizations have to figure out how they're going to get this deal done and just get it done. Otherwise, we'll be back here in a couple months and we three might be sitting smiling at you because you'll be upset that nothing has happened.
I won't be upset because whatever happens, right, we have moved on. We've moved on. The Jordan Love era is starting, whether Aaron Rodgers likes it or not, whether the Jets like it or not. For me, the little bit of leverage I have is that you don't have a quarterback, and as you mentioned, Ken, I'll say this, right? The Jets organization is crazy. The moment Derek Carr walked in that building, I was not letting him leave that building. I understand you think your ceiling is so much higher with Aaron Rodgers, and it is, but you've seen the drama that this kid has caused the organization. You've seen him waffling with retirement. You've seen the lack of commitment, and yet you are going to pin your Super Bowl hopes on that guy instead of looking at your long-term future with Derek Carr. I was never letting Derek Carr leave the organization, and at the worst-case scenario, I may have pivoted to Jimmy Garoppolo, but no, you are stuck hoping that the Packers, and I thought for a while, right? My biggest fear was that because relationships drive everything, right? And what is understated in this situation is that Robert Saleh and Matt LaFleur are best friends. So I was hoping that they wouldn't let friendship come and let the Packers give away Aaron Rodgers for nothing, right? I was like, all right, do not let this stay in this situation. And thankfully, Gutekunst and Mark Murphy are not idiots. It's like, we don't need him. You do. Gonna sit here and play a game of cat and mouse. I'd like to play cat and mouse more with our viewers, but we're well over time. I know Marsh is back there screaming at me. So, guys, Ken, start first. Please plug your show. Tell the lovely ladies and gents in the chat when they can find you and how they can find you and what you have coming up next.
Yeah, so the Green Bay podcast, we are on every Tuesday. Know that the clocks have changed for the lovely folks back in the Caribbean and for us that are not in Arizona. We are on at 8 p.m. Eastern, which syncs up 8 p.m. in the Atlantic. Then it's 7 p.m. Central for those of you in the Wisconsin time belt. 6 p.m. for us here in the Mountain time zone. 5 p.m. Pacific. We are easing our way through this NFL offseason. We've been discussing all of the different acquisitions that these teams have made. My co-host AJ and I, we have a good time every week. We've had Justin on several times with us, and it's always a blast whenever he can join us. If you can't find us, you're probably not looking hard enough because we are on YouTube, we are on Facebook, we're even on Twitter Live. Then everywhere that you can find an audio podcast, you can find us as well. It is green like the color, and then B as in boy, A as in apple, J as in Jesus, E as in echo, green beige. Come join us.
Awesome. Like as he said, anytime it can go on. So awesome watch. Awesome time. Same thing, Brian. Tell the lovely folks how to find you.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at BS Takes or on TikTok at Bolstered Up Sports. Appreciate you having me on, Justin.
As usual, if you know we're talking football, we have to bring Brian. With Peyton, though, what we're doing now, he didn't know, we're going to make a pitch to have Peyton on full time. Right now, we're asking Peyton to come on, hashtag this Justin, full time, because I'm almost certain Peyton no longer has his own show. So we are making a pitch right now, and not a New York Jets type pitch, but we want to throw a bag at you, Peyton. We'll talk deals or terms of this deal afterwards, but we are making a pitch for you to come and join the lovely folks here at hashtag this Justin full time.
That is breaking news. You're really putting me on the spot here. Yeah, I don't have my own show anymore. I don't really do anything anymore. I actually don't have social media anymore. So that's news to me. This is a pretty big news. I have to process this, you know. I just like a dream.
We have to
true,
put him
you
in
know?
darkness for what 4 days for him to come up.
Yeah. I have to do a darkness retreat, you know. I really just have to soak it all in. But no, I really appreciate everyone at This Just In for having me on again, and Brian and Ken. It's always great working with you guys. Make sure you guys go check everyone out on this panel.
And
It's
make
always a
sure
pleasure.
while you're in the chat, get your pleas for Peyton to come and join the show full time. Let's put in the chat. Say, yeah, we want Peyton on full time. As Ken said, if you're not finding us, you're not looking hard enough. So before I pitch my own show on my own show, please go check Bolstered Up Sports and please go and check Green Bay's podcast. I love both of their shows. I love what they put out. That's why I bring them on the show. We don't bring people that we don't love right here. And when you're done subscribing, when you're done following, and when you're done watching them, come right back here every Monday night, 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern now, because the clocks have gone forward. I almost tripped myself up. If you want Indeed or short form content, we are on Twitter, we are on Facebook, and we are indeed on Instagram. That's hashtag this Justin, and you know what I'm about to say. Please put the hashtag in. None of us want Max Kellerman and those bad hot takes. You want analytical content with measured thoughts. Hashtag this Justin. So for Ken, for Peyton, for Brian, I'm indeed Justin of hashtag this Justin signing out. We'll be back here next Monday. Thank you so much for wasting your hour and a half.
I know that after tonight, you don't have to look up at the stars. No. I know
take a look at my dream world.
Tonight, you don't have to look about the stars.
Chat, if you wanna come get it, then come for it. I'm so clean, my kick's nice, I'm Chuck Norris. Minute made the beat bounce, had to jump on it. Run for it, run, Gump Forest.